My name is John Sibley Butler. I am a professor of sociology and management at the University of Texas at Austin. I've been here since 1974. I am the director of the IC2 Institute here on campus, which is an interdisciplinary institute, and I'm head of the Herb Kelleher Center in the McCombs School of Business. My research, of course, spans the whole idea of management and wealth creation and job creation, and what I call simply the impact of organizational theory. At this time, my research, the paper that I just finished with Todd Hamilton, who just finished from here, we're working together. He's now a professor at Princeton University. We're doing generation status and self-employment. We're looking at the impact of, over the years, that is, how does generation status affect those individuals going into self-employment? And basically, the longer you've been in America, the more likely you ought to be, less likely you ought to be self-employed. So therefore, that brand of research goes along with my research on self-employment. My latest books is on Mexican American entrepreneurship, an American story. I also have a book on entrepreneurship and self-help among Black Americans. The book last year was on ecosystems and looking at how to create wealth. And I also have a book on university ecosystems. Right now, I'm really deep into what we call social physics. One of the great things about the economy that we live in is the connectivity. So I think that the theory of sociology is at the center of everything. That is, the internet has made it possible for us to return to the great ideas of our founders, Auguste Comte, and talk about social physics, and that is, you don't think about the psychological things of individuals. You think about how people are bounded by social networks, and those social networks help to explain human behavior. Well, at this time, I'm locked in applying that concept to self-employment and wealth creation. As the director of IC2, we create lots of enterprises. We've created over 300 enterprises. I've raised $750 million for startups. The study of all of that is very, very sociological. So we're looking at how the networking itself can be done through time and space. In the old days, when Austin was first done, of course, a lot of the research was on the technopolis. That is, the city itself is just a way to communicate. But what happens when you can communicate instantly? Well, Auguste Comte said the great thing about modeling sociology, if you will, is that it's very, very similar to physics. That is, physics cannot see gravity, but it has impact. We cannot see a network, a norm, or value, but it has an impact. So the creative juices, the creative ideas of Auguste Comte is back to my research, and that is looking at the impact of networking on self-employment, and more importantly, if we can put people in the network here in Austin, whether it's in Silicon Valley, whether it's in Boston, whether it's Columbia, then it is the network that has the greatest impact, if you will, on how and what people tend to do. So therefore, my research continues in organizational science, and it bridges the relationship between managing people and creating certain kinds of things. So I hope to apply the networking theory, for example, to military organizations. I have another student here, Ori, who is from Israel, and we're looking at the Israeli model of self-employment and what we call technology transfer. So the Israelis utilize the military, since everybody must attend the military or serve in the military in Israel, and they create the entrepreneur companies or teams, if you will, in the context of the military. And from that organization experience and all of the military culture, then they expand, and that becomes a company. I'm looking to do the same thing. I have a former student here who is now a 4-star general, I might add. Now I've been talking to him about putting that kind of program in our academies, or indeed in the context of the American military. That is, we must continue to change the forms, the organizational forms. And I think if I had to say one thing about organizational theory, it is this. The most important thing to analyze now is the network. It is not the organization. The organization can be standalone, but the great connectivity of the internet means that communities are being organized on the internet, People are getting married on the internet. Companies are being formed on the internet. Companies are being downsized on the internet. And the question is, what does it do to labor? Well, what happens is that labor becomes more individualized and individual firms becomes more flexible. That can be true of religious institutions online. It is certainly true of the online universities, and it's certainly true of many of our American enterprises such as Cisco Systems, which is all online. So the research is exciting. I work with people in management, I work with people in sociology, and now I'm working with people in physics as we look at what I call social physics and how it impacts networking.
Hi, I'm Rob Crosno. I'm the Director of Graduate Studies in the Department of Sociology and a Research Associate at the Population Research Center. I have been here for 11 years, but I had a previous incarnation as a Longhorn in the early 90s as an undergraduate. At the PRC, I'm a part of two major research areas. The first is children, youth, and families, and the second is education and educational inequality. I'm going to talk about the latter today because it's really one of our newer or emerging areas of research, but also one that's become increasingly prominent and successful. Now, the term educational research is definitely an umbrella term. It subsumes many different people doing many different things, and that's certainly the case here at Texas. For example, one of our most prominent educational researchers, Chandra Muller, studies stratification in post-secondary and secondary education, or college and high school, and she has a focus on social class and poverty. I, on the other hand, study disparities in learning in the transition from early education programs into elementary school with a focus on immigration. But there's some many commonalities between what we do, and among all of us who study education here in Texas, we are very much committed to translating research into policy as a means of identifying solutions to our most pressing social problems. We all are very much aware of how the educational system overlaps with other societal institutions, like the family and community and state, and how learning and academic achievement is interrelated with other aspects of development, like health. So we try and take a really holistic approach to education and how it relates to inequality and how it relates to policy. Now, in any area of social science, you're only as good as the data that you have. And unfortunately, good data is hard to come by in certain areas, like education and educational inequality. We need data that's very broad, allowing comparisons across states and across districts. We need data on a lot of people at the same time to support the kind of rigorous statistical analysis that we like to do. And we need data that's very detailed, that has lots of information from students' academic records that are protected by some pretty strict privacy laws. So this erects some obstacles, some very real obstacles, in our ability to do what we want to do. But fortunately, there's so many of us here, we have a critical mass that allows us to get around some of these obstacles. For example, we have all come together to get a collective site license from the National Center for Education Statistics. As a result, we have a cold room here, a single room that is very secure. It has security like Fort Knox, in which we can access some of the most private and detailed data from the U.S. Department of Education. And it's this kind of access that gives us an advantage over other people who are trying to do the same kinds of work. And that's one of the great things about being here and being in this community of educational researchers. Now, there's a saying here at Texas, which is, what starts here at Texas changes the world. And we like to think that educational research is one of the areas that we are trying to change the world.
My name is Maya Sharad. I'm on the faculty in sociology, and my interests are in questions of women's rights, political sociology, comparative historical sociology, and the Middle East in particular, and North Africa. In the years that I've been here at UT, a number of graduate students and myself have created the PHS network, which stands for Power, History and Society Network. That it is basically a forum for faculty and graduate students interested in political sociology to come together, exchange ideas, And we organize panels, colloquia. We invite visitors to come and talk to us, and we also organize graduate student workshops. Sometimes we put together workshops that included graduate students and faculty on particular topics, and that is something that we have found particularly gratifying, because it just brings a lot of intellectual communication. And we have done that for a number of years, and we are getting bigger and stronger and continuing on the same path.
Hi, my name is Hyunjung Ha, and I'm also in sociology. I'm a graduate student. As one of our collaborative works, I've written a paper. This is actually a book chapter which will be published soon with Professor Sharat. And in the paper, we examine how Tunisian family law has changed over time. So we specifically look at different social forces that affected changes in Tunisia family law.
And my name is Amina Zaroug. I'm also a student in the Department of Sociology. I study social movements and women. Together with Hyunjung Ha and Dr. Sharad, we're working also on another collaboration, which is a paper about protest during the 2011 uprisings in Tunisia, Egypt, and Libya. This collaboration emerged from a project that we worked on in Dr. Sharad's comparative history course in the fall of 2011. The discussions we've had and the engaged intellectual debates that we're currently working on have inspired us to also open up a more enduring space for these kinds of critical discussions about the Middle East. So in the fall of 2012, we have collectively organized another group to be part of PHS called the Middle East Working Group. In the fall, anthropology students, communication students, and students from government attended, and so we're now moving from sociology to other disciplines and including them in this conversation.
And I just want to add that this last group that emerged really quite recently, I think basically this last year, has met with tremendous excitement throughout UT because it brings together graduate students who are working on a region where a lot is happening nowadays, and it gives the students in the social sciences a chance to exchange ideas, exchange literature, and really to feel much more part of a community in working on particularly political issues in the Middle East nowadays. And I also want to add that the collaboration among the three of us has been just a lot of fun. It's really fun to work together and so to generate ideas when we're doing our meetings, and to sort of critique each other's research and writing, and so that I think we should remember that side of things.
I'm Christine Williams, and these are three of the members of FemSem, which is a group of graduate students that meets every other week to discuss their research on gender. This is Kate and Megan and Beth, and they've all presented their research on their ongoing research for their master's thesis and their dissertation research, all topics that involve gender. So maybe they can each briefly describe what it is that they're studying. Kate?
Sure. I'm Kate Everett, and I study parenting and gender and childhood, and right now I'm working on a project where I have interviewed gay and lesbian parents about how they parent their kids and how they think about gender in all of that, and FemSem has been really a really helpful resource in terms of having people to give feedback, to give ideas, and to just sort of help with the whole process of creating research papers. So.
Great. And this is Megan.
I'm Megan Neely, and my research is on gender and politics. I currently work on women political leaders and the challenges they face on the way to office. I found FemSem really particularly helpful with getting feedback from my cohort members and other grad students and from Christine, and we find solutions to problems we face in our research and new things that come up that we need to work out solutions for and creatively think about. So it's been a really productive time for us.
Great, and this is Beth.
Hi, I'm Beth. I'm a first year. So this first semester of FemSem, I was kind of an observer, but it taught me a lot about the writing process and the editing process. So I found it really helpful. I'm starting my thesis this summer on the care work, the unpaid care work that parents do, and the equality factors involved in that.
So we have a very lively group of graduate students. This is just a small fraction of them in the sociology department, and we have a very excellent program in gender studies here in the sociology department.
My name is Dave Kirk. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Sociology, specializing in urban sociology and criminology, and I'm here today with one of my PhD students, Carmen Gutierrez, and we're going to tell you a little bit about one of our research projects. Recently, just a couple months ago, the Austin Police Department was given a grant by the Department of Justice, $1 million grant to revitalize an area on the north side of town, specifically the Runberg area of town. And the police department has partnered with UT, basically myself and Carmen, to assist with that work and to advise them on what type of initiative to implement and ultimately to evaluate that initiative. And so we're engaged in a lot of work with APD right now. In fact, I was at a community meeting last night in Runberg trying to do outreach with the community and get their input on how to best revitalize and change their neighborhood. But my specific role is to do a bunch of data analysis of the crime problem in the area to figure out what is the biggest source of the problem in the area, and then I will go to APD and advise them on what has worked in other areas in order to address similar crime problems. And so it's basically a 3-year grant process where the first year is planning, second year is implementation of some type of program, and the third year Carmen and I will come in and evaluate the program. And so it's part of President Obama's neighborhood revitalization initiative. So it's a big deal that Austin got one of these grants, and it's an important work to really help bring back the Runberg area town. What I've asked Carmen to do, one of the first things I've asked her to do on the project is called a windshield survey, and the reason it's important to do one of these surveys, and she'll describe it in just a second, is because we want to assess the extent of neighborhood disorder. And the idea is, after this 3-year project period, there's less disorder in the neighborhood, and so we need a before and after comparison, and Carmen is heading up that effort. So I'll let her tell you a little bit about her interest, and specifically what she's doing for that work.
So as Dave mentioned, my role right now is doing a windshield survey, which has essentially been based on past research, putting together an assessment list of criteria that we're looking for to rate street blocks in the community. And it's a qualitative assessment to evaluate the disorder, as he mentioned, the physical disorder, as well as the social disorder based on the way that landscape looks, streets, signs, anytime we see people in the neighborhood, garbage, litter, things of that nature. And what I'll be doing is actually driving through the Runberg community with 2 students. I've been able to recruit 2 undergraduate students to assist in the research with me, which has also been really helpful for my training and experience as a supervisor on a project and to delegate tasks. So that's been my role. And we'll be driving through the community, rating the blocks, and then putting that information together to do a quantitative assessment of the actual physical and social disorder of the community. And then, as Dave mentioned, later after an intervention has taken place, after the initiative has gone through, we'll go back and rate and do the same physical assessment of the community in order to see if the disorder has changed and hopefully has decreased at that point. So that's my role.
And you want to talk about kind of your broader interests?
Should I do that? Okay. My broader interests, I'm a second year grad student. Dave is my advisor. My graduate work is broadly within criminology, crime law, and deviance. My specialization for my master's thesis right now is intersecting immigration laws and legislations with crime. So my research question that I am hoping to uncover is how has a shift in immigration enforcement from federal authority to local police, how has that changed the trust and relationships that undocumented immigrants have with their local law enforcement as a result, as I mentioned, of changes in nationwide legislation. And how it's helpful that I'm involved in the project with Dave is that we've built a lot of community relationships in the Runberg neighborhood that also is made up primarily of undocumented residents and also refugee residents. So there's a large population that I've been able to tap into and get to know, and I'll be interviewing a group of first generation, potentially undocumented immigrants, mainly Mexican immigrants, to understand and get to know what their relationships are like with the police and what their understanding is of the potential risk that they face of deportation by the police. And Dave's been really helpful throughout my time here in UT, encouraging me to apply for different types of grants. I've used my master's thesis idea that he's helped me develop to apply for NSF and the Forward Fellowships, which he's been a great big part of helping me through those things. So I've had a good experience and productive experience so far here at UT.
Okay, so my name is Gloria Gonzalez Lopez. I am an associate professor of sociology at the University of Texas at Austin, and I've been working here in sociology for more than 10 years. This is my 11th year, and I do research on urgently needed issues. I do research on sexuality, gender, with Mexican immigrants, and also more recently I've been doing research on sexual violence in Mexican society. And this project, the one on sexual violence in Mexican society, is a reflection of what is urgently needed, what's highly needed, and it was born from my work in Ciudad Juarez with people who have been exposed to sexual violence. And I teach on sexuality, gender, and also sexual violence issues, and I work with graduate students, undergraduate students who are also moved by issues that have to do with what we do here at the university. Which, I'm one of the professors who believes in the motto of UT Austin, what starts here changes the world. So some of our students, all of the students I work with, are concerned about issues that are cutting edge, and one of them is Juan Portillo, who is second year. You're a second year.
First year in sociology.
Oh, okay.
But third year at the university.
Oh, okay. So it's, okay, yes. And then we met through the Women's and Gender Studies program.
Yes.
Right.
Where I got my master's in here at UT. I took your sociology of sexual violence class.
Yeah, that was last year. And you are one of the few, actually here in UT and also nationally, one of the few Central American Americans in Sociology. So that's actually an honor for us to have you here in sociology because, you know, we have Central American Americans are underrepresented in our discipline. And Juan is not only bright, but, you know, he's also making a difference in our department and our university. So
All thanks to great faculty,
oh,
such as Dr. Gonzalez Lopez.
thank you, thank you. Thank you. So do you want to share more about the project you're working on for your dissertation, you know, your project, what you're
Yes,
interested in?
sure. So, I guess it all started when I took your class, the Sociology of Sexual Violence class, and it was so interesting how when sexuality, violence, race, gender, all these identities and social identifiers and issues of the world converge, they expose, kind of like you said, the urgent matters that we as researchers kind of feel we have a responsibility to try to answer and try to make a difference with. While I was taking our class, I was also working with exclusively female undergraduate students through an assistantship through Women's and Gender Studies. And I started making connections between the class and some of the experiences that the students were going through. And we also collaborated on a Rain Day project a couple of years ago, where you served as a panelist, and we organized it for students. So in the past couple of years, just kind of developing myself as a scholar in gender, in Women's and Gender Studies, but also in the gender track here in sociology. Everything that I learned in your class and through our mentoring relationship has always kind of stuck to me and driven me to a topic now that I want to explore, which is sexual violence in college campuses. Because as we found out when we did that presentation, women in college are 4 times more vulnerable to sexual violence than women of the same age who are not in college, actually. So taking into account everything that I've learned so far and that we've talked about, it seems like a very urgent matter. And I'm really happy that I have you as a guide and a mentor, because it's really not an easy subject matter.
Yeah, well, thank you, and it is wonderful that you really want to work on this project, because again, you know, something that we are doing in our department, you know, people, especially, and I'm thinking more about some of the students who are doing research on gender and thinking about your project. I'm thinking about the need to have this kind of engagement with society, you know, to be connected with society and to do research on issues that are urgently needed, critical, issues that are really screaming at us, like telling us, you know, pay attention to us. And we are aware of all the violence that is taking place in our country. You know, I mean, we're aware of, you know, I mean, as we speak, you know, the White House is deciphering all these laws and gun control and all of these issues. So it is important for us, you know, to also participate in some way and to be part of this, you know, in this movement, you know, really transform our world. And we know that we transform ourselves first, right? Or as part of it, as we aspire.
Yes.
To be part of this, you know, collective transformation. So it's wonderful that you want to work on this project, and an honor, of course, you know, to be working with you.
An honor for me as well.
Thank you.
So I started working on this book, and it was Minutes in Court, Weeks in Jail, and it was a book about the ethnography of pretrial detention. And I got a contract from John Wiley, and it was then about the 3rd year, maybe the 4th year, so it's getting a little dicey, you know. Come on, Sheldon, hurry up. And so the contract signed, so forth and so on, and they went on, and it was in my 4th or 5th year, and John Wiley's series just went under. What do you do? I said, you just can't not publish my book. And they said, yeah, we can. And so they did. And so, of course, my colleagues here in the who, you know, were nice, they started worrying, oh, I wonder what Sheldon's going to do. Blah, blah, blah. Well, and this is where just be prepared to deal with obnoxious people. one person, Christine will know probably who this is, came into my office, very officious. And he was a little bit older than me, but not much. He or she was a little bit older. Well, Sheldon, you know, you really ought to be doing some more work because it looks like your publication. That's fine. But what he really was telling me is that I should be doing something that was like he was doing, not something that I wanted to do. Okay? And that's where you really have to sort of have this kind of develop a core of what you want to do and what you think is important and where you're going to make it. And it really doesn't matter that much what it is, but have it. Because I just asked him to leave. And very nicely. And when I was thinking about what to say today, I was thinking about, he's got this song, The Crooked Piece of Time. And so that's what and why The Crooked Piece of Time? Because I think mine certainly did, and everybody that I've ever talked to in any detail, it's the same kind of thing. That your career will kind of develop on kind of a crooked path and an unexpected path, and it'll take turns when you're not expecting it to take turns. Some of those turns are good, some of those turns are bad, but it's rare, it's not very frequently that somebody will have everything mapped out at at your stage in your career, and you'll end up exactly where you think you were going to end up. And so I thought I'd just review some of that stuff, and then we could just chit-chat about that. But I was not a sociology major when I was an undergraduate. But I had a really good anthropology professor. And the first thing that I always talk about, the first quirky turn, is that I needed money in the summer and I could type. And so he had been doing these interviews with this elderly Quakiutl Indian chief, and I still love that word Quakiutl, so I use it whenever I can. But it's sort of the indigenous folks in the Northwest, and he had about 75 hours of interviews with this guy, and he was talking to him about his life and how his life had been impacted by modernization and those sorts of things. And this was in 1960, whatever, 1964, and this guy was 85 years old, so he had been born in the late 1800s. So you can imagine what he had seen. Mm-hmm. And so it was just this, his name was Jimmy Seaweed, and I thought, man, what a great name. Yeah. You know, so man, how can you not listen to Jimmy Seaweed?
So my name is Juan Portillo. I am a first-year PhD student here in the Department of Sociology, but it's my third year at UT. I got my master's in Women's and Gender Studies here at UT as well. And it was during my master's program that I had the honor and privilege of meeting Dr. Gloria Gonzalez-Lopez in her Sociology of Sexual Violence class. My relationship with Dr. Gonzalez-Lopez has evolved over the past couple of years. Now as a sociology student, I am pursuing a research interest regarding sexual violence in college campuses and gender violence as well. This interest of mine evolved from Dr. Gonzalez-Lopez's class and the way in which we saw the different dynamics that kind of make sexual violence inevitable for so many students. Students in this case, but people in society in general. And it was looking at specifics such as race, gender, sexuality, economic class, immigration status, that sparked me to really think as a scholar about these issues. Even though that was not my focus for my master's thesis, it really helped me develop my topic, which was the integration of Mexican American female students here at UT Austin. And now I want to use the information, the knowledge that I gained in doing that master's thesis, and apply it to a sociological project where I look specifically at sexual violence in college campuses. And I choose college campuses for two reasons. One, I have worked specifically with an all-women's support group sponsored by the Center for Women's and Gender Studies here at UT. And it was during the time that I was taking Dr. Gonzalez-Lopez's class, and we actually collaborated on a project about sexual violence on college campuses, and we found out that women in college are 4 times more vulnerable to sexual violence than women of the same age group outside of college. So those statistics were alarming. And I just feel like there's something that has to be done in our position of privilege here at UT Austin in this wonderful department. And it is through Dr. Gonzalez Lopez's mentorship and guidance that I find the hope and the strength to do this project.
No, thank you, thank you, thank you for. It's a privilege to be working with you, and well, my name is Gloria Gonzalez Lopez, and I am an associate professor here in sociology. This is my 11th academic year here at UT Austin, and I've been working with. I've been working on issues that have to do with, sexuality, gender, and with Mexican American and also Mexican populations. And I think, and I share this, Juan knows and some of my students know, students who work with me, that I take, the UT's aspiration, what starts here changes the world, I take it seriously. And I think that projects like, the project you're working on, like yours, are urgently needed and really reflect the hope that we have and the promise that we have when we think of a new generation of scholars, who are really concerned about changing their own, their own lives, really expanding their intellectual horizons, but also in connection with, what's actually happening in our society. And the fact that we live in a society that has been telling us that we have all of these issues with regard to violence. I definitely celebrate the fact that we have, students like you working on these issues. So we do work that is highly relevant, highly needed, urgently needed, and work also that truly matters. So it is wonderful, to be in this profession and to be in this department and to truly embrace, and do our best to aspire to what we aspire also as an institution. So it's great, and it's wonderful to be working with you and with our students here at UT Austin Sociology Department. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Again, my name is Carmen, and I'm a second-year graduate student in the Department of Sociology with a focus in criminology. I would say that I gained this interest as a sort of a lifelong daughter of someone who's worked as a prison administrator, and also as a college student, I gained a lot of experience within the criminal justice system. I was a part of a community project where we volunteered at local prisons and jails and taught classes. So I gained a unique experience actually as a visitor in a place that visitors are often not welcome, which are behind bars in jails and prisons, and actually working with inmates. So I really enjoyed that experience. And then I later decided to explore that interest further in graduate school, and that's when I was introduced here at UT with Dr. Kirk's work, which has introduced me to a different side of criminology, which is actually more so the structural neighborhood impact that disadvantage has on influencing individual level and group level crime. One project that he's introduced me to is with the Restoring Runberg initiative, and we're understanding how, like I said, structural forces have a heavy impact on crime and disadvantage overall, and how those relationships are very correlated. So that's a different side of criminology I've been introduced with my work and mentorship with Dr. Kirk.
So one of my primary research interests is thinking about where people live influences their behavior, how neighborhood context ultimately propels people towards criminal activity or keeps them from it. Related to that is the topic of the legitimacy of the law, how the actions of the police either make people think that they're approachable or or conversely, makes people fear the police. And then that's related to the topic of immigration. The idea of whether tough immigration enforcement makes people scared of the police. And I bring that up because, well, a couple different reasons. One, Carmen's interested in the same type of thing, and so when she applied to our program a couple years ago, I was excited to bring her on board and to get her involved in some of my projects. Carmen mentioned one project called Restore Runberg, which is a 3-year initiative funded by the Department of Justice through the Austin Police Department to revitalize an area on the north side of Austin, which has very high concentrations of crime, a pretty sizable undocumented immigrant population. And so one of our questions is, what are the relationships between the community and the police department? Are they characterized by fear or are they characterized by trust? And assuming there's some fear, what can be done to restore those relationships so that the immigrant community comes to view the police as a resource and not as an institution that's just looking to deport them. And so, one of the things that I'm thinking about as I help APD on this project is thinking about what kind of specific initiatives should they do, and also how to design the project in a way to where we will know if it works. And so that requires a key focus on evaluation and doing a kind of before-after comparison. There can be a lot of work on the project for everybody, but certainly for UT. And Carmen and I are already very busy. For example, I've asked Carmen to head up what's called a windshield survey, which is an assessment of neighborhood disorder. But there's going to be a lot more work, perhaps in social network analysis, randomized experiments, things like that, as we go forward over the next few years. I've been at UT this is my 4th year. Most of my research until this project had been focused on New Orleans, Chicago, or state of Maryland. This is kind of my first big project in Austin, and the idea is to use this, was to build the relationship between UT and the city and the Austin Police Department in order this first project is a springboard for further work and a more established relationship. So hopefully this one will pan out, and we will not only reduce crime in the Runberg area but also revitalize the community, but in the kind of a side benefit of sorts is that it helps establish a better relationship between UT, the Department of Sociology specifically, and the Population Research Center with city agencies, and so that we can be of help to the community and of help to the city.
And I think, as Dave mentioned, it's a growing area, especially in the department. So there's a lot of work for the both of us, and a lot of work that we could potentially give to incoming graduate students, and I think that's important to mention. Criminology is a really popular area, especially here with the undergraduates, and it's a growing field, and there's a lot of extra space for help that we would need now and in the near future with the project for incoming potential students interested in this area. There would be a lot of great opportunities for research here in the local area especially.
Thank you, Marlene and Mariana. What they shared with us are various examples of microaggressions. As Marlene said, it's no longer a struggle of fighting for that seat in the classroom, but fighting for that recognition, fighting to not be invisible in some cases, but also fighting the stigmas that make you hyper-visible in the institution. And that hypervisibility is used to police students, to regulate their integration into UT, into the classroom, into the groups that we have created, or used to exclude students as well. So just to define the term microaggressions, according to Tarayoso, these are ongoing racialized and gendered incidents questioning students' academic merit, cultural knowledge, and physical presence. Microaggressions are hard to pinpoint. They're very hard to talk about. These are very nuanced interactions that when they happen, we are extremely confused. We don't even know how to react. And talking about it is extremely hard. And what makes it harder is that it doesn't happen just along racial lines. It happens along the intersection of race with gender, with ability, with sexuality, with class, etc. So all these stories are not neat, they're very, very messy. And hopefully with the conversation we're having today, we will achieve some kind of understanding about it. Just to go back to microaggressions, these are used to reposition students into subordinate positions to deal with the anxiety caused by the presence of students that do not embody that normativity, who do not embody whiteness or maleness or middle class values, etc. Well, they can happen, they happen all the time, they're very pervasive, and they can even happen when people have good intentions. So even when a space is created on campus to supposedly support students, all these hierarchies and logics that we have come to rely on are reproduced within these very organizations. And like I said earlier, they used to either make students invisible or hypervisible. One way that students are made invisible is through curriculum, and I'm talking about curriculum broadly conceived as both what is taught and the manner in which it is taught. So if a professor designs a classroom that only has one chapter on the history of Native Americans, African Americans, Mexican Americans, and only told from the point of view of white people, that is a way to make students of color in the classroom feel invisible, feel marginalized. At the same time, if a professor comes into class and starts blurting out jokes about how they are so rich, or how women are taking over, UT, or anything ridiculous, these are also examples of how students within the classroom can feel very marginalized and disconnected from the professors. The other aspect of microaggressions I wanted to talk about is the hypervisibility of students of color or queer students or anyone who does not embody that white male middle class ideal of the university. By pointing out the deviance of students, if you point out someone's accent or if you question their citizenship status, if you joke about a woman's intelligence in engineering classes, for example, this may not sound to some people like great grievances, but they add up and they take a huge toll on the students. And in my own research, I have seen how students can drop out of classes, drop out of school, change majors, just seek help from outside the institution, which is supposed to be a state institution, representative of all of us. And in those cases, UT, TAs, professors, even ourselves as peers, fail everyone.
And when I was thinking about what to say today, I was thinking about, he's got this song, The Crooked Piece of Time, and so that's what and why The Crooked Piece of Time? Because I think mine certainly did, and everybody that I've ever talked to in any detail, it's the same kind of thing, that your career will kind of develop on kind of a crooked path, and an unexpected path, and it'll take turns when you're not expecting it to take turns. Some of those turns are good, some of those turns are bad, but it's rare, it's not very frequently that somebody will have everything mapped out at at your stage in your career, and you'll end up exactly where you think you were going to end up. And so I thought I'd just review some of that stuff, and then we could just chit-chat about that. But I was not a sociology major when I was an undergraduate. But I had a really good anthropology professor, and the first thing that I always talk about, the first quirky turn, is that I needed money in the summer and I could type, and so he had been doing these interviews with this elderly Kwakiutl Indian chief, and I still love that word Kwakiutl, so I use it whenever I can. But it's sort of the indigenous folks in the Northwest, and he had about 75 hours of interviews with this guy, and he was talking to him about his life and how his life had been impacted by modernization and those sorts of things. And this was in 1960, whatever, 1964, and this guy was 85 years old, so he had been born in the late 1800s. So you can imagine what he had seen. And so it was just this, his name was Jimmy Seaweed, and I thought, man, what a great name. So man, how can you not listen to Jimmy Seaweed? What I learned from that, and this is where I think you also just ought to have your eyes open, not only for who you are and what you want to do, but what you, within the context of what you want to do and how you want to do it, there are different routes to take, okay? And what I figured out at about, I'd been in the university then about 16 years or so, is that I enjoyed building programs. Go figure. And I was still an associate professor, and so everybody said, oh man, be careful, you're going to be an administrator, you're never going to be promoted. And you have to think about that. You do. You just really do have to think about it. But I had some things in the pipeline, and all of a sudden, I published 2 books in 1 year, which doesn't mean anything, because it's just that it took me a really long time to write both of them. So it came out. But in any event, what I enjoy, I learned something about myself, that I not only enjoyed teaching and doing certain kinds of research, but I also enjoyed building programs. And so I said, well, I want to spend some time building programs. And that's kind of what administrators do, if they do it appropriately. They don't do it, if you do it with innovation in mind, and not just making sure the trains run on time and that sort of thing. So one thing led to another, and I was appointed Dean of the College of Liberal Arts, and then one thing led to another, and I was appointed the Provost of the University, and enjoyed it a lot. The one thing that is this core of what you want to do is for me the key for resilience, because things can happen around you and you can absorb them, because you're not dependent on somebody else's opinion of you, which will fluctuate and forget it. Have a sense, evaluate yourself. That's the source of resilience. And it's not easy, because a lot of times you think, man, I don't know, what's this, what's that. But for me, that was very, very important throughout the whole thing. I guess that's the other thing that I want to say in terms of resilience. Don't trust yourself, trust your instincts, and trust what happens to you, your own experiences. Use those things. Use them.